Podcast City Network.
Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Everett Lee Show. A shot of entertainment to the head. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the entertainment.
What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Everett Lee Show podcast. Welcome to the 150th episode of the Everett Lee Show. I'm excited. I am so excited tonight for this monumental podcast. And a lot of it is not possible without you. I want to thank everyone that has supported the Everett Lee Show over the last 150 episodes. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and sincerely. Without your support and your dedication and to everything that you do to help Everett Lee, I would have not made it this far. So I am so grateful and happy for everyone that supports the Everett Lee Show and Podcast City Network. And tonight, for the 150th episode, I needed some star power, baby. That's right. All the way from Kentucky. All the way, baby. I'm talking about right now, he is on the line. The true master of wrestling ring music. None other than Hurricane JJ Maguire. How you doing, JJ?
Doing great, Everett. Thanks a lot for having me on the big show. I sure do appreciate it, but it's really cold up here. I wish I was down there where it's warm.
It's not much better down here in Daytona. I'll tell you the truth, because it's just that it's starting to drop right now. The temperatures are in the 70s right now, probably about the 60s when it gets night, and the days are much shorter down here, believe it or not. By 5:36, street lights are already coming on, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is. It's just crazy, because you figure that with daylight savings time, that makes the days shorter. That's what I love about summer, because the days are longer because we have that extra hour and stuff. By 8 o'clock, it's usually 8:30. It's dark, but now 5:36. It's already dark. I'm leaving work at my job, and it's like, wow. It's like I felt like I just got to work, because it feels like the same thing. It's dark when I go to work, and it's dark when I come home.
Well, it's kind of like a dark match then.
Yeah, that's right. It is kind of like a dark match, man. That's exactly right. You took the words right out of my mouth, man.
Okay.
The last time I seen you, you were down here in January for the Podcast City Network's 1-year anniversary show, which was amazing, man. We had a lot of fun. You get to hang out, and you got to see a side a lot of people don't get to see of Everett Lee, and you get to spend some time with Everett Lee and his family, my wife, my kid, and my dog, and it was a great time, man. It was. I really did enjoy your company during the week when you were down here.
Well, thanks a lot. I tell you, I had a great time, and I always liked the family life. And in the past, like when Jimmy Hart and I would work on a lot of the music for all the organizations, it was the home type thing too. And he had kids and dogs that barked, and just like you, Everett. And I do enjoy all that. And I hadn't experienced the family type life thing in a while, because my kids are about half grown, and you kind of forget about how fun all that was. And there's a lot of hard work to that too. But you sure have a beautiful family, and your mom's a great person, and I enjoyed talking with her. We had great conversations while you were at work. But don't worry, she didn't tell me any big secrets about you that isn't already known.
I'm glad she didn't spill too much, man. I am glad she didn't spill too much. And the one year show, we had it at the City Limits Tap Room in DeLand, Florida. A lot of the Podcast City Network shows came out. We had the Super Radio Brothers out there. A couple other shows I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. We had the Super Radio Brothers out there. We had Chris Carnage with the Chris Carnage Show. You came out. You set up a table. You sold merchandise and stuff that you had with you. And then we had a live band play. We had the Craig Thompson Project play, a good reggae band. And you even performed, man. You even performed in between their sets, which was awesome, man. Keith... Tyler from Seven Kingdoms, the bass player for Seven Kingdoms, ran sound for you, and he was amazed by it, man. He couldn't get over, your performance there on the stage, man.
Well, I appreciate it. He's a tip-top talent like yourself. I mean, he plays multiple instruments and sound guy, and what a great person. I mean, the Podcast City Network people were great, and Tyler was great, and Craig Thompson band was fabulous, and the whole thing was just a really outstanding event, and I had a great time on that, and looking forward to doing it again.
Oh yeah, me and Chris have been talking about doing for what we're going to do for the 2-year anniversary show. We've been bouncing ideas off of each other, trying to figure out what we're going to do and stuff. We're looking at big things, maybe a band that's well known around the area there. And DeLand might, decide to, come out and do a performance, and what shows are going to be coming out, because there's so many possibilities right now on what we could do for a 2-year show. But when 2020 starts rolling around more, we'll get the information out there, and heck, yourself could show up for the 2-year anniversary show. You never know, man. You never know.
With bells on my toes.
Bells on your toes.
That's right, always.
And one other thing about that 1-year show, you even got up there and you got the jam with the Craig Thompson Project, man. You got to play I Shot the Sheriff, and you jumped on the drums there. Tyler, he couldn't believe it. He looked and he said, "Who's that on the drums?" And we looked, and it was like, oh, shit. That's JJ, man. Look, he's playing the drums. You killed it, dude.
Well, I took off my typical gimmick outfit, that I dress up and wear when I do the one-man show that I did on what you're talking about there for the thing. I do a 42-minute stand-up show where I do a couple of wrestling themes, but I do a lot of other stuff that I'd written and been released in the mainstream and whatever, and anyway, so I jumped out of there and went back and changed into some low-profile clothes and put on a beat-up cap and then kind of crawled back up there around the back way and got in on the drums while nobody was looking, and everybody was kind of trying to figure out, who is that? It was me.
It was JJ up there, man. He was up there.
I had a great time.
I know they tried to get you to stay up there because they loved you, man. They loved having you up there, and they tried to get you to do two other songs.
Yeah,
and
I know that. I told him, I said, well, I think I've done enough. I don't want to take your drummer's job, because he's a great drummer too. Their drummer, by the way, is a fabulous. He's kind of a jazz fusion, reggae-ish rock blend type of drummer, but he's a great drummer himself, and I sure did appreciate him letting me sit in and play, and it was really fun. I mean, that event you all threw was really exciting. It was a great thing.
I appreciate it, man. It was really exciting, and me and Chris, we drank and ate so much cake. And then the funny thing about that is that the cake, okay, Jim Knight, who owns the City Limits Tap Room, he loaned us a knife to cut the cake. So the next day when we got back here, we're looking, and I freaking noticed this knife.
I got in on that too. I think I got a few bites at night too while y'all weren't looking.
We all did, man. I mean, it was a huge cake.
Yeah, we did.
It was huge, man. I mean, we had icing run out of our eyes by the end of the week with that cake.
Oh yeah, it was dynamite.
It was all thanks to my wife there. But I noticed that knife because my wife said, I said, where do we get that knife? And I said, I don't know where we got it at. And she said, that's not one of ours. And then we realized, oops, we got Jim's knife. But I ended up returning the knife to him about a few months later. He forgot all about it.
Oh, that's okay.
He said, I forgot all about this, man. He's like, you didn't have, he's like, I was wondering where this knife went. I said, well, I've had it for months. I said, here you go. I said, I even put it in the dishwasher for you, man. I cleaned it before I gave it back to you.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it was. But that was a great time. Looking forward to year 2 to see what that brings for the for year 2. But one thing you're talking about making appearances here. Last month, you made a appearance at the Heroes and Legends convention up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yes, sir.
How was that?
Sure is. And it was a great event. Half the people there I wrote the music for. Demolition and Brutus and Honky Tonk Man and everybody up there. It was just a great get together all the way around.
Yeah, that you met some people that you haven't seen in a while, and you got to reconnect with people that you haven't spoke to since the WWE, WCW days, right?
Yeah, a few of those that were. A few of them I've seen along the way, and we've conversed and done things, but there's still quite a few that I hadn't seen in quite a while. And Greg Valentine, I hadn't talked to him probably in 10 years, and it was exciting. I got took some pictures with him and everything, and it was just a lot of fun. It was a really great event.
That is awesome. And also, you got to where you were sitting at. You had J.J. Dillon and you had Tully Blanchard of the Four Horsemen sitting right across from you.
That's right.
How?
Tully was sitting straight across from us. We were eye to eye, and JJ and I went over and took a little quick break. I had to stay at my table because people kept lining up, to talk and buy some merchandise and whatever. And so I went over there and I told Tully, I said, Tully, I just wanted to tell you that Tessa to me is the best woman wrestler in the business at this time, and she's super impressive and really ultimately talented. And he said, well, she's got the DNA. And I said, that's for sure. I mean, what else could you say? That said it all. But Tully was so polite and nice. And he and JJ, they never stopped signing. I mean, people just continually, hitting their table. And then sitting right to my left with elbow to elbow was Earl Hebner and Tommy Rich. And so we had a lot of big laughs over there. And then I did a few magic tricks for them, and I stood them on their ears. And we just had a great time. And the turnout was great. And, what can I say? It was exciting for me to be up there amongst so many icons, that I wrote the entrance themes for. And it was really flattering for me to be a part of all that with them. They're the greatest of all time. I'm just a little guy that puts some icing on their cakes, so to speak. We're talking about cake there a while ago, but it was really a great thing for me, and I really appreciated it. And the fans were stellar, and it blew me away that I had quite a few people came up to me and said, Mr. Maguire, you're the reason that we came to the show. And I said, what? I said, you're kidding me. I mean, you've got people out here, the greatest of all times, Intercontinental Champion, greatest of all time, and so on and so forth. You got all these guys out here, and you got Sting out here, and you came to see me? They said, yes, we did, because this one fella, he owns a recording studio up there, and he and his wife came, and he said, we saw that you were coming, and we came expressively to see you. I said, I don't have the words to answer that, except thank you. And I'm so appreciative that after all this time that people really still care about it and are interested in it and ask a lot of nice questions about, how to put the music together and why. And, of course, everybody likes to ask, what's your favorite theme? And that's tough to answer because I love them all. But I have a few that are maybe I like a little more than the others. But I was just glad to do a job, for a company that was at that time the greatest, and still probably is the greatest wrestling entertainment company in the world. And I was just fortunate enough to, have a little something to do with that. I really appreciate it and thank all the people for caring and telling me so. I was completely still blown away and pinching myself that people are that interested after all these years and everything.
Right. Yeah, I'm amazed too by how many people coming up and remembering what you did and what you could contribute to the sport of professional wrestling, because you made the characters come to life with their entrance music. You did so many for so many great, big, over-the-top talents, because that right there, the 80s with wrestling into the early 90s, that right there is my favorite time with the themes, because when you hear that theme, you know who that wrestler is. And just writing all those themes, collaborating with Jimmy Hart is just amazing. And just being at a convention like there at the Heroes and Legends at Fort Wayne, Indiana, just meeting people, like you said, driving just there to see you out of everybody. And a lot of people go to those conventions, and I would suggest, and you probably would suggest too, people should go out, and when they get a chance to go to them, because you'll never know who you run into, right?
That's right. And plus you'll find that the greatest of all time are also the nicest of all time. Now, there may be a few troublemakers in there and so forth, but the majority of all the GOATs, the greatest of all time guys, are so polite and friendly and glad to take time, with the fans and the people to talk. And that's what impresses me too. And I always go back to this little story. When I worked at Glen Sound, the famous Hollywood sound company does all sound for all major movies and TV shows from the early 60s up to date. And I just think about meeting Bob Hope and working with him. And this is all in my book, by the way, too, this among many other stories. And, I guess Bob Hope's probably one of the greatest comedians that's ever lived. I don't think too many people would argue that.
Right.
But he was so polite and nice and just a normal type person, no big star ego type thing at all or whatever. And I learned real fast by working with people like that at Glen, especially, and in Hollywood, that the greatest are really the nicest.
Mm-hmm. They are. They definitely are.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of your book, you put a book out last month there, My Life in Heaventown. You collaborated with John Costner on it. When did you decide that you wanted to get your book out, get the story out, and a lot of stories, just like you mentioned there with Bob Hope there? When did you decide you want to get this all together and get it out there?
Well, I occasionally be sitting around with some friends, and they'd say, "Tell us about some of those A-listers you worked with in Hollywood, JJ." And I go, "You really want to hear it?" And, I never ran down into people's houses and go, "Hey, listen to this story." That's the best way you can run friends off real fast for anything. But if people would ask, then I would tell them. And so somebody in there, eventually when I was telling some of these stories at a party or something, they'd say, "You ought to write a book." And I thought, well, that's for famous people. I'm just a musician that does some music and whatever. I'm not Bob Hope or Hulk Hogan or whoever, whatever. And they said, "Yeah, but you got some great stories with a lot of those people, and you ought to tell it." And I thought, well, okay. And I just kind of ignored it. But then fast forward years later, my son came home from school, and when he was 14 years old, and he said, "Dad, would you text these people and tell them that you are the wrestling music guy?" And I went, "Who wants to know?" He said, "Friends of mine in school." And I went, "What? 14-year-old kids want to know who I am? That's crazy. I can't even believe that hardly." And so he handed me his phone. He had about 18 people on there that wanted proof or whatever. So I texted him and said, "It's true. I am the guy. I am the wrestling music guy." And I got to thinking, if kids that young or have any interest at all in something like this, it happened so long ago, before they were even born or anything, I thought, well, maybe I ought to tell some of these stories and do something. And I guess the best way to do it would be to have a book. And so that's what really propelled me to get together with John Cosper and get this book out. And then also Jim Phillips, a great writer also, who writes for a wrestling blog called The Gorilla Position. he wrote an introduction on for the book for me, and then of course my good friend, best friend, and music partner, Jimmy Hart, wrote the intro, the foreword to the book.
Right.
And I was appreciated that too. And but anyway, that's what got me to to do a book. And I didn't. It's not a tell-all book about dirt and crime. It's not a TMZ thing. I told all my experiences with A-listers and whoever were all positive. So I didn't really have any dirt stories to tell or anything. Everything I had was happy-go-lucky, I guess, but that's just was my experience. And so that's what the book is. It's talks about. It's not just a wrestling book. It's not just a book about Hollywood icons, but it's the blending of the two and my experiences with a lot of Hollywood's greatest A-listers and also sports entertainment and wrestling's greatest A-listers too. Nice.
You met a lot of people, which is mentioned in the book here. I mean, you've rubbed shoulders with Jackie Gleason, Rick Springsteen, Tom Petty, Vince Neil, Gene Simmons, Christy Alley, Henry Winkler, Robert Conrad, just Telly Savagne, Carol Alt, Patrick McNee, and John Landis. I mean, just you met so many people being out there. I find fascinated about Henry Winkler because our Happy Days, I loved watching reruns of that on like TV Land and stuff. And if you don't mind me asking, can you tell me just a little bit about talking with or your experience with Henry Winkler?
Sure, I'll be glad to. And all these experiences in my book, these weren't just casual fan meetings where a fan runs up and goes, "Hi, can I have an autograph? Great to see you, blah, blah, goodbye." No, these stories, I had, close associations with all those names that you dropped there. And it's a lot more than just a fan meet sort of thing like people might be thinking.
Right.
So to answer your question, Henry came in. He was doing overseeing all the overdubbing and the dialogue and the narration for a show called Sightings. It was a paranormal show that was on back in the early 80s, and it was highly rated. Some people, I'm sure, remember that show. And so they did all the sound work at Glen, and I was in charge of working directly with the celebrities and, ask them if they want their telephone calls held or do they want certain calls to come through, who and what.
Right.
Do you want any kind of particular food on the sound stage? I was their liaison to comfort for their work while they're working there at Glen. I was in charge of public relations at night like that, and then I also oversaw the guy who ran the security team for Glen as well. So
okay.
I was in charge of the whole show. I was in charge of everything. I had to, they would call me from Paramount or Columbia and be bringing the major motion pictures over at midnight to have the sound work done on it and whatever, and I oversaw all that and made sure everything went to the right department. And so I was kind of a jack of all trades, but the beauty of it was I got to work directly, extensively with the celebrities that you mentioned. And Henry Winkler came in, and he had a big bag of health nuts and health food, stuff and grapes and whatever. And he said, "I take that with me everywhere I go." He said, "I'm kind of a health nut." I said, "Sounds good." So, but anyway, he was working on the show, and he took a break, and he came out there, and he said, "What was your name again, sir?" And he treated me like I was a celebrity.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "I'm John Maguire." And I said, "Anything that you need, Mr. Winkler?" He said, "Just call me Henry." And I said, "Sure thing." So he said, "Would you step outside with me for a minute? I'm going to check on my car." I said, "Sure." I said, "Our security team, don't worry. They're keeping an eye on it. Nobody will touch it, or no worries out there." And so we went out there, and he had a brand new Porsche. I forget the model number, but it was one of the super expensive ones, of course.
Uh-huh.
And so right beside his car was a Corvette Indy pace car. And so he asked me, he said, "I looked at that pace car when I bought my Porsche, but I thought I would go foreign and give the foreign thing a whirl, and so I got the Porsche instead. But I had to really decide if I wanted to buy Corvette 78 Indy pace car like that or this, but I bought this. He said, who owns that car? I said, Henry, that's my car. He went, oh, yeah? And I said, yes, sir. I said, that's my car. I said, I was in an accident. A guy ran over me in front of the Hollywood Bowl. So when the payoff came, he about killed me. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and had extensive life-threatening injuries. But anyway, I took a portion of the insurance and bought this Indy pace car. And he said, fabulous. He said, it's a beautiful car. And he said, we've got some nice cars sitting out here, don't we? And I went, yes, sir, we sure do. This was like 1980, we were talking there.
Right.
And, but he's a car guy, and he's just, of course, he's a Rhodes Scholar also. And just another example of how polite some of the greatest icons are. And we had a great conversation about a lot of different things. And he just is a great person and a great guy, and he's nice to everybody. So that was my Henry Winkler experience.
Nice. I like that. That's awesome, man. Meeting someone like that right there.
The following support and sponsor Podcast City Network. City Limits Tap Room, sports bar in DeLand, Florida, has brew on tap, serve food. The grilled cheese is excellent. For upcoming events, check out City Limits Tap Room on Facebook.com/City Limits Tap Room. Morph Tee, a comfortable and lightweight 100% polyester t-shirt with illustrated morph characters that, when worn, will make the illustrations seem to come to life. For more of Tony Rodriguez's work, you can see his full line of apparel at teespring.com. Sports Sanity Customs have worked with organizations from custom embroidering polo shirts to jerseys for your kids' baseball team. They do it all. Armed with state-of-the-art equipment and an in-house design team, they are equipped to take on your next project. Visit their website to learn more, sportsanitycustoms.com. Visit Sports Sanity Customs on Facebook.com/SportsSanityCustoms. 3Count Design offers a wide range of graphic design products, video, photography and other forms of media. Everything from t-shirt designs to websites. Visit Facebook.com/3CountDesign for more. Demo Blast Studios, an explosion of imagination. Original artwork, podcasts, video, apparel and more. Visit DemoBlastStudios.com. Visit Demoblast Studios on Facebook.com/Demoblast Studios, the best family entertainment pro wrestling show in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky's Own Wrestling brings quality family vintage wrestling to a town near you. Kentucky's Own Wrestling offers a ladies division in wrestling and a training school. Kentucky's Own Wrestling is the current longest running Southern promotion. Visit Facebook.com/Somerset Kentucky's Own Wrestling. All supporters and sponsors are brought to you by Podcast City Network.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
For more of The Everett Lee Show on social media, follow and like The Everett Lee Show on Facebook, The Everett Lee Show, Twitter, @TheEverett_Lee, Instagram, Everett Lee Show. Audio versions of this podcast and previously released podcast can be found on everettleeshow.podbean.com. Stitcher Radio, The Everett Lee Show, give a rating and comment. Apple Podcast, The Everett Lee Show, give a rating and comment. YouTube, The Everett Lee Show, subscribe to the channel. The Everett Lee Show, your shot of entertainment to the head.
You're listening to The Everett Lee Show.
Tom Petty, Vince Neil, and Gene Simmons. I'm interested in Gene Simmons, man, because I mean it's Kiss. I mean he's iconic there. And what experience did you have with Gene Simmons?
Well, Gene was had just made a movie called Runaway about Tom Selleck was in it and Kirstie Alley and all. That's I worked with all those people and met them there. What they did is Glenn Glenn had a premiere theater room that they would have debuts of the films just for the producers, directors, and actors and their family, and so they could come and see the movie, in that type of environment without a lot of fans jumping around on them and wanting autographs and stuff. That all came later on the public debut, but anyway. So we debuted a lot of great movies there privately, for the people like I just described. And so Gene was in that movie. He played the bad guy in that and did a fabulous job. For those that haven't seen the movie, stream it and take a look. It's a great movie. And he went in there, and of course I greeted every person at the door to the theater room and asked them if they need any special attentions or whatever, part of my job. And so then he comes up and he says, "Hey, man, how are you?" He says, "You look familiar." I said, "Well, Gene, I used to be in a multi-million seller group called the Gentrys." He said, "I know. I knew I'd seen you somewhere. You're so familiar looking." And I says, "Well, you may have seen me in a Gentrys picture or something, but, I moved to Hollywood, and I work this job, but then I also do studio work, and I have a band and so on. I'm just doing a little bit of everything." I was in my 20s then, latter 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, he went in and the film started and whatever. And next thing I know, I'm standing in the hall. He comes busting out of there. He said, I said, "Anything wrong, Gene?" He said, "Brother," he said, "I can't stand to watch myself act." He said, I think I'm terrible." I said, "Oh, no." I said, "I sat down here and watched them work on the dailies and stuff before this event, and you're a fabulous bad guy. And it's no wonder." And he said, "Well, I appreciate you saying that, but I can't stand to watch myself." He said, "Would you walk out here and sit in the limo and talk to me for a minute?" I said, "Well, sure, I'd be glad to." So I went out and sat in the back of the limo with him, and he talked about Kiss, and he talked about music, and he talked about movies. And I mean, Gene is just a genius, number one, of a kind.
Uh-huh.
And again, one of the greatest icons of whatever, one of the most nicest people in reality that you'll ever meet.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I was listening to Kiss the other morning on my way to work there. I was listening to Love Gun, and then on the way coming home, I was listening to Calling Dr. Love, which I never really heard. There's still a lot of Kiss songs I have not heard, and that was one that I didn't hear, and I loved it. I was just sitting there walking around the house there for a couple of days, just singing "Call Me Dr. Love," just catchy, just like the Gentrys. I loaded up the Gentrys one day. I was sitting there I had my daughter with me. She was sitting here on the computer with me, and I was sitting there going through YouTube, and I pulled up the Gentrys. I had pulled up "Keep on Dancing." She loved it. She loved it. She just loved that. She started bouncing up and down and jumping up and down. My daughter, just 2 years old, just loved it, and she had a good time. And speaking of having a good time, just this book here is just amazing. I was looking on Amazon.com where you could buy the book at, and you've already gotten like 5-star reviews. How do you feel about the feedback that you've gotten? And a lot of people and acquaintances and friends that you know in the business, have they reached out to you to let you know, "Hey, I bought your book, read it," and let you know what they thought about it?
Oh yeah, and for the wrestling fans, which probably the majority of your listeners are, most of them. I also wrote his theme song too. Is the Longside Burn King himself, Honky Tonk Man. He read it and he made a comment. He said, "Extremely interesting and what a great ride," he said.
Nice.
And so I really appreciated that. I gave him a copy of it at the Heroes and Legends show. I said, "Now, Honky, here's my new book, and you're in it." And there's pictures of he and me and Jimmy Hart, and and then I talk about he as well in it. And so anyway, he really liked it. And Honky's type person that he tells it like it is. If he thinks something's not that good, he'll say, "Well, it's got spots, but overall, I wasn't that impressed." He's not trying to impress anybody. He'll tell it like it is, or whether it makes him mad or not. And he liked me. Lucky for me, he liked the book and said so. So, yeah, I've gotten good feedback from that. And, it's just been great. I just told these stories in a fashion. It's more, not so much all about big me. It's more about everybody, the big icons and the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And my observation of the biggest of all time, and I'm just a regular type guy that got down in the middle of a lot of these icons and got to work with them and got to create this music for the greatest of all time wrestlers and so forth. And it's more of a observation of how I perceived some of the greatest of all time in all parts of entertainment that I worked with.
Right. It's amazing. You've had an amazing journey. You have, and I know when you were down here and you were spending time right here with me, sitting like right next to me here when you were back in January, and we were on YouTube sitting there, looking at the music that you wrote, you and Jimmy Hart put together. And I almost had to pinch myself because I'm sitting here looking up at Shawn Michaels' Sexy Boy. And the man who
most
wrote
played
it,
wrestling theme of all time. It's had more airplay at matches and TV than any other theme in history.
Yeah, because we were talking about that actually because you mentioned that, and I said, you know how much of the music wrestling theme that you and Jimmy have on YouTube, and you weren't really sure, so you sat right here next to me, and we pulled it up there, and that was the first song that popped up there, and I pulled it up, and we listened to it, and there was like two versions of it. There was the first version had Sherry Martel singing it, right? Correct?
Right, that's right. Yes, sir, that's correct. Uh-huh.
And we pulled that one up.
The second one was Shawn actually sang it because Sherry had dropped off, and whatever, and she's having troubles showing up for the events and things, and so they weren't sure how long she was going to last, so they suggested that we put Shawn's voice on it.
Right. How was that right there? Collaborate with him, having that right there, having him sing it.
It was with Shawn. Oh, great! Shawn he's a great team player and worker, and he picked right up on it. He listened. Jimmy actually sang a track on it for a male voice because her voice is higher, a female voice. Mm-hmm. And so Jimmy sang it in a regular octave for a male voice, and so Shawn took that home and listened and sang along with that and worked with it, and I think he did a very respectable job for a person that's really not a singer at all.
Right.
And I tell you, somebody else that did a good job that is not a singer but did well on what they had was Jerry Lawler. That was the first wrestling record ever done by myself and Jimmy was for Jerry Lawler, and Jerry sang it, but Jimmy put a lead vocal track on there, and then Jerry listened to that and used that as a guide and whatever. Then we took Jimmy's voice off and left Jerry's on, but
right.
Lawler did a good job on that as well, and these guys are wrestlers. They're not singers. They're wrestlers, and they're not trying to fool anybody into thinking that they're Robert Goulet or some fabulous world-class singer or something, but it didn't matter because they were who their character was. They were who they are, and they weren't trying to fool anybody. They were being themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's how I always tried to come up with all the music parts of the themes and everything is I wanted it to sound like something that sounded feasible, not something that's so overproduced and over the top that people can't sing along with it or can't play it or whatever. I'm sure there's millions of home brew garage guitar players that can play Sexy Boy.
Right.
And I wrote it that way. I wrote it that way to where that it's easily intelligible and understandable. And I tried to make everything that I did. I tried to make it not sound the same, like just the same old guitar heavy riff that's pretty good, but it's just the same type of sound and thing over and over for different characters. I made the music entirely original to each character. And of course, Jimmy, he came up with most of the words and whatever, the lyrics. He's a great lyrical writer. And then Jimmy, he plays some harmonica and can bang on the piano a little bit, but Jimmy doesn't really play any instruments per se, professionally. He's never had any training or anything, but he's has a fabulous ear. And, he would make great suggestions like, Maguire, I think it sounds good, but I think that first part ought to be a faster because when they come out of the curtain, so-and-so, he's almost running to the ring, like the Rockers, for instance.
Right.
Right. If we'd have had a ballad behind the Rockers, that wouldn't have worked too good.
No.
So it had to be dynamic and quick. Dun 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 dun. And I think when I first started playing, I went, "Here it is, Jimmy. Here's what I come up with." Dun 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 dun. He said, "It needs to be faster because you know how they run to the ring." Okay. So, but that kind of input and that kind of suggestion can make or break something that's okay to start with, but it can make it great rather than just being okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how our partnership, I pretty much did all the mechanical work and came up with all the musicality that you heard on the themes. But Jimmy was sitting right there with, advice of that kind of nature that's extremely important to make it all come together like that. But together, I think we were the most formidable music writing team that's ever been in wrestling. That's what the fans say, and I'm beginning to believe that from comparing it to a lot of the other stuff. Now, some of the other people that contributed music to the wrestling industry, they have done great work too. But Jimmy and I have had more absolute world-class icon music than anybody in the business that's done any of the music overall. We have more people that we have done the themes for, 113 themes altogether, and featured music and a few bumper tracks, like things that they would play when they're getting ready to go to commercial and things like that.
Right. That's amazing. I love it, man. I love it. I love everything that you've done for professional wrestling with the themes, collaborating with Jimmy Hart, and just bringing everything to life. And you've done an amazing job, and having your book out.
I appreciate it.
And
thank you, Merritt, for saying that. I mean, that really means everything in the world to me when people say that.
Sincerely, I'm being sincere, man. I mean, your story's amazing. You've come a long way with everything that you've done, the people that you met, and just the music and your contribute to professional wrestling. And you got yourself a legacy right here that people will not forget, and especially more of your legacy and that journey there with your book, My Life in Heaventown. And you're going to be doing quite a bit of appearances. You have here coming up this weekend, you're going to be having an appearance. Can you tell me more about that coming up here?
Sure. Thanks for asking, and thank you again, Everett, for those comments. I mean, I always tell people this, and I'll answer your question, is that I didn't write all that music for my ego. I wrote all that music for the world's ego. But yes, I'm going to be in New York this weekend at the big event. And I'm going to be there with a lot of the icons that I wrote the music for as well. And it's going to be a great thing. And I'm doing a lot of different functions. And when I get there Thursday, I'm going to be on the Monty and the Pharaoh show, variety show that's on up there and real popular. And they're going to have, over the course of Thursday night and Friday night, they're going to have Animal. They're going to have Hillbilly Jim and Michael Elgin and a couple other people. It's going to be great. And I'm going to actually be playing a little music with a friend of mine up there, a guy named Bart, who is, he and I are going to play a few licks of some of the icon themes. And then Hillbilly Jim is going to sing "Don't Go Messing with a Country Boy," and we're going to back him up on that. So that ought to be, I kind of let a cat out of the bag on that, but that ought to be really fun. And of course, I know all those guys, and I didn't write Hillbilly's music. Jimmy and I didn't write his. That was written by Marshall Chapman, who is a world-class, famous. It's a woman actually.
Uh-huh.
But she's a famous country songwriter and really a famous rock songwriter and performer herself. And but we're going to play Hillbilly's theme, and he's going to sing it. So here we go. And then I'm going to be appearing at Cardboard Collectibles on Friday during the day, doing an autograph signing. And this place is a sports memorabilia shop place. And so I'm going to do that. And then do a little semi-band gimmick on Thursday and Friday night. And then Saturday at the big event, I'm going to be interviewed by Monty and the Pharaoh live on the floor of the big event from 5 to 6 p.m. And that ought to be fun, too. So got quite a few things to do up there. Going to be running and gunning around and I can't wait. I love New York City, and we actually go to Huntington, New York, is where the Rockstar Studios are that Monty and the Pharaoh broadcast from. And then it's a podcast show, but it's also visual, and it's on the local cable system up there as well, too. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to be one of the first guests that's going to be on the show for people to see on the Comcast cable system and everything up there, whatever. So we're going to be running back and forth from Huntington is like 35 miles from downtown New York City.
Right.
So we're going to be running back and forth from there back into New York and back out there and so forth. But, yeah, I got a power-packed weekend planned and looking forward to it, and just promoting all my old good friends. And, oh, yeah, I forgot to say, speaking of great friends, Buff Bagwell is going to be on the show one night that I'm there.
Yeah.
Of course, I know Buff well, and Buff's great, and I've got a screenplay that I've got written up that I'm interested in maybe having Buff be a big star in it. So I'm going to talk to him more about that. And then I have a couple of agents. Eric Sims is going to be there. He's wanting to talk to me about doing some stuff. So who knows what the future holds, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to the Big Apple to see what we can stir up. Nice,
man. Nice. I love it. I definitely love it, man. You got a lot of big things going on, and one thing talking about big, I heard is, are you familiar with the American Giant?
Oh, yes.
I heard
American Giant.
Something through the grapevine. I wanted to ask you this here. I heard it through the grapevine that you and the American Giant have something big on the horizon. Can you tell me anything about that?
Well, that's true. We can't tell a whole lot about it right now because we're just putting it all together, but he and I are going to be doing some appearances together, and then he's going to be making some appearances here in Kentucky also with Kentucky Zone Wrestling that I used to be a part owner of, which I still next year I'll be making some select appearances with them as well. So. But the Giant, he and I are going to be doing some separate things from that, and then he's going to be doing some stuff with KZW, and then he's got some other stuff cooked up too. So the American Giant, the world better be ready, because anything that the American Giant and Hurricane JJ does is going to be big. You can count on it.
Nice. And speaking of American Giant, I'm going to have to press him on some information, because next Tuesday, a week from today, I will have none other than my guest will be the American Giant right here.
Oh, he's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, and you're lucky, not to interrupt, but I just so excited I have to say this, that the American Giant now, he's worked with Hulk Hogan. He's worked programs with Kevin Nash. This guy is no first-timer or basement wrestler. You know, he's worked with some of the greatest of all time in WCW and WWF and so on. But I'll let him tell you some of those stories, because I'm sure you and the fans will be interested in hearing about a lot of that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm definitely going to be interested, because I am going to ask him quite a bit of questions, and I'll press him more and see what he can tell me about you and him collaborating, since you're not telling me that much there. Not to put you on the spot, man. But I'm going to see what I can get out of him. The American Giant, he's going to be on the Everett Lee Show next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, which I'll be streaming back over on twitch.tv/TheEverettLee. So check out next week's episode with the American Giant. If you don't have Twitch app on your phone, download it, create a free username, and you'll be able to comment on the live stream when Everett Lee goes live, and you'll be able to watch it as well. So make sure you download the Twitch app. And, of course, you could follow Everett Lee right there on Facebook, The Everett Lee Show, and on Twitter at The Everett_Lee. But besides Tuesday night, I will have none other than on Wednesday night. I will have on at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on November 20th, Wednesday night, the original Glow Wrestler, gorgeous lady of Wrestling, Sunny the California Girl, Patricia Summerlin, will be on the podcast next Wednesday, and that will be streaming also on twitch.tv/TheEverettLee, and I will be having her. And of course, on Thursday night, you can check out the all wrestling program, Slammin' Thursday edition of the Everett Lee Show, with myself and my co-host, the Chris Rose. This week we'll be talking about Monday Night Raw, the Wednesday Night War with NXT and AEW, and we'll be discussing this past weekend's AEW pay-per-view, Full Gear, and much, much more on Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, over on twitch.tv/TheEverettLee. And that's pretty much it. Before we do close, JJ, where can people find more of the true master of wrestling ring music, Hurricane JJ Maguire, at on social media?
Yeah, you can. Actually, there's 3 sites there with my name on it, but one of them is the most active. One of them I haven't fooled with in a long time, and some guy, smart aleck, said, "Yeah, you only have 9 friends." Well, I had that particular account was hacked and whatever, so I gave up on it. But I have a company here that's designing me a really great web page and everything. It's really professional and all that. But you can see about me and general information online. You can pick the icon where it shows the picture of me leaning against the ring rope rail, and then also the one. There's 3 of them, but that one, and then the one where it's got a picture of me in the wrestling boot band. Those 2 are your best bets, and you can see what you can see there. But I'm going to shape that up, and next year I'm going to have a lot better of a social media setup. You got to remember, I've only been fiddling with social media for barely 2 years now. So
Right.
I got late to the game, but at least I'm at the game.
Yep. Yeah, that is. At least you're keeping up with the times, man, and that's great, because I think that's one great quality about you is you've kept up with the times. You keep up with everything that's going on with current wrestling, with music, and you just keep up with it so much. And that's you have evolved with the times, and that is awesome.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I like to try to keep up and have fun. You know, life is nothing without some fun. So here we are.
Exactly. Speaking of fun and life and everything, that's pretty much it for this 150th episode. I want to thank, again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the program, I want to thank everyone that has supported Everett Lee in the last few years and all the way up to this 150th episode. And I could not have done it without the support from everyone that tunes in each and every week, downloads and listens to the content that I put out there for you to listen to. No matter if I'm interviewing a legend as JJ Maguire, if I'm interviewing a indie filmmaker trying to get that movie out there and needs a little push to get it out there, even if I'm talking with a hungry indie wrestler that's trying to get his name out there, anything, I'm pretty much have him or her or them on this podcast so you can listen to their stories and support and just love everything. I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of lost here with words, but I am so thankful for everyone that has supported me, because in the last few years, I just put my blood, sweat, and tears in everything I do. You could say it's a hobby or an addiction or an obsession, but it's what I love doing. It's what I'm doing.
It's an adventure. How about an adventure?
That's that. Hey, I'll go with that, man. I'll definitely go with that. But yeah, it's who I am, and I just love each and every one of you for supporting me. And I don't know what else to say, but I will say this, though. You can support more of the Everett Lee Show over on podcastcity.net. Head over there for shows such as the Everett Lee Show, Final Score, Wrestle Popcast, Deathmatch Wrestle Podcast, Mark the Shark MMA Show, Final Score, Chris Carnage Show, and much, much more in the Super Radio Brothers and the Imaginarium with Scott and Todd over on podcastcity.net. Follow on Facebook, Podcast City Network. Give that thumbs up. And on Twitter, send them a tweet over on Podcast City Network at Podcast City Net. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for the video and audio podcast over on YouTube, Podcast City Network, and follow them on Twitch, Podcast City Network. And more of the Everett Lee Show on Facebook, The Everett Lee Show, Twitter, follow me at the Everett_Lee, Instagram, Everett Lee Show, and audio portions of this podcast over on YouTube, The Everett Lee Show, and over on everettleeshow.podbeam.com. iTunes, write a review. Give me a 5-star on iTunes if you subscribe to iTunes, and Stitcher Radio, same thing. Give me a 5-star review, and let me know what you think of the podcast for audio portions right there of the Everett Lee Show. And that is it. Everett Lee signing off. We'll see you again this Thursday for Slammin' Thursday of the Everett Lee Show. Peace.